Ladies first?
Yeah, let's go with Dr. Silvas. You're
Oh,
already
really?
on speaker, so let's go with that.
So I am, I'll keep this brief because I know we want to get to your questions, but my name is Matt Silvas. I grew up in Northwestern Pennsylvania in a very small one-stop light town. I am an example of a person who ended up in medicine as a physician, very happy, but went to college with intentions to do something different. So I went to college to become a marine biologist. And I had a chance throughout my science courses at my college to meet lots of folks who were interested in a career in medicine. And over time, I became more and more interested in the potential of that career choice, and ultimately spent time shadowing my hometown family doctor. He was the only doctor in our area, and really fell in love with the idea of family medicine as well as a career just in medicine in general. So I now have had an opportunity to do a few different things, and I'll just highlight a couple of things that I've done throughout my career that may be of interest to some of you as we open this up to questions. I've had a chance to practice family medicine not only in the state of Pennsylvania, but I had a chance to practice in both Alaska and Wyoming. So I've done true wilderness medicine in really extreme rural environments with limited resources and small communities. So I've had those experiences. I also do sports medicine as a subspecialty within family medicine. So I take care of a ton of athletes in my clinical practice and do a lot of work in the community around high school, collegiate, and professional sports. So I'd be happy to talk about any of those aspects of family medicine. And the last thing I'll mention is that I do a lot of businesses within medicine now, not something I would have ever predicted as a high school student, but I do a lot of what we call administrative work, meaning I am a person who sits behind the scenes to try to help orchestrate the care that we deliver to the communities that we serve across all of our providers in our department here at Penn State. And there are about 150 providers. We provide a lot of care to a lot of people. And so I kind of a back room view of what it takes to provide care across large communities of patients. And so if any of you have an interest in business and how that might intersect with medicine, I'm also happy to answer questions about that. So nice to meet all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Silvas. And I wanted to remind everyone to put your questions in the chat. So if you have questions, feel free to ask those while they are telling their stories, and we'll be more than happy to get to those. And that's why we're here, to answer your questions. Also, don't be afraid to turn your video on. So we'd love to see your faces as well. So now let's move on to Dr. Gilbert.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Bernadette Gilbert. I am originally from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And that's what kind of brought me back to Penn State here at Hershey Medical Center. I kind of been around a little bit when it comes to just traveling. I did my undergraduate in Virginia. I did all my training in Boston. Then I ended up in Mississippi for 6 years, and I have been back now in Pennsylvania for the last 4 years. So I kind of always, I won't say I always knew I wanted to be a physician. I think I kind of solidified that in high school. Actually thought I was going to be an elementary school teacher until high school, and I credit my biology teacher in high school, Dr. Shelley, for really getting me interested in a lot of medicine and sciences. I also have to credit Penn State Hershey Medical Center, because I used to come up here when I was a sophomore in high school on Wednesdays and actually get exposure to medicine, medical students, the lab, the sim lab. And so all of that kind of fostered my interest in medicine, starting where you are right now in high school. But I always knew I didn't want to just see patients all day. So I have the pleasure of doing a lot of different things. I have the pleasure of serving as the Student Affairs Liaison for underrepresented medical student support here at the College of Medicine. I have the pleasure of being a teacher and an educator, and I get to teach in certain courses. I have the pleasure of being a society advisor coach, and I'll talk to you guys about that later as well. And I have the pleasure of actually working on some DEI initiatives within our own department here in family medicine. And I even do a little bit of research too. So one of the things that I love about my career is that I get to do a little bit of everything. And that is probably one reason why I actually went into family medicine, because you get to do a little bit of everything. So I hope to answer you guys' questions and looking forward to today's session.
Great. And Dr. Gilbert, would you mind defining DEI for the students? Because I'm wondering if they'll all know what that means.
Yeah, sorry. That's one thing we as physicians do poorly sometimes, is we use a lot of acronyms and everything that we think everyone knows what we're talking about. But it's diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Great. Thank you so much. So now we'll turn it over to Dr. Ramirez and have her share her story as well. And something that I want you guys to be thinking as she's sharing her story is we're going to ask you all, like, how are these stories, or how do you relate with their stories, and what are you passionate about? And we're going to ask you all to share those in the chat. So if you just want to be thinking about that while she's speaking, and just what you've already heard from Dr. Silvas and Dr. Gilbert, and just how are you being impacted by these stories, and what are you passionate about? So I'll turn it over to Dr. Ramirez.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm really delighted to be speaking to all of you, and I'm very impressed that you are in this program. I remember being in your shoes in high school, and at that time in high school, I knew I wanted to be a doctor. I didn't know what kind of doctor. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I felt like I wanted to, and I was going to one day figure it out. So I actually was born in Dominican Republic. I practiced a lot to lose my Spanish accent because I grew up in the inner city of Jersey City by Newark, New Jersey. I don't know if you know where that is. And it was very unpopular, and quite frankly, it was unsafe for you to be different in any way. And so for me, I remember at that time, I was straddling two worlds. So here I was in my home speaking Spanish, looking at TV in Spanish, the music was Spanish. And then I went to school and spoke English. And so I was unfamiliar with the American culture beyond what I learned in school. And, I was most familiar with the Latino culture. And I remember being a child, and as soon as I could speak English, I was an interpreter for my family. And I remember that the first time I felt that I had to be a doctor one day because I had to make a difference was being an interpreter. I remember being 10 or 11, going to the doctor's office with mom or dad or my family friends, and being a little bit upset about how my family was being treated by their healthcare providers because they didn't have a mastery of the language. So that was kind of, for me, the first kind of fire that was lit for I must one day be in that seat to advocate and fight and serve the community that sounds, looks like me, and is like me. And so, that kind of started my journey. I've talked to students and, high school students and college students, et cetera. And I felt like we needed representation. We needed an example that we too could be in the healthcare careers or profession. And so that kind of led and influenced how I got here, my path, and I can get into it a little bit more detail, even offline after today, if you want to email me. Was not the straight path. So I did lots of research before going to medical school, and I went to medical school in the Caribbean. And after coming back from the Caribbean, I actually did some training program in Maryland and then Illinois. And then I was even on the Navajo reservation for a few months. I'm a little crazy. But I had a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot. And one of the things that I've been most impressed about and what drew me to family medicine was this ability to really be an advocate and a servant for not just one patient, but a community and their families, and really be an advocate for them in so many ways. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but you'll learn that there's really no limit to what family docs can do. I'm a little biased because I'm a family doc, but we really have a touch point not just in the office with the patient, but a lot of times in their home, doing events like this in the community, etc. So happy to be here. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramirez, for sharing. And I actually, as I see a couple of comments in the chat here, and I want to give you all a few more minutes to add comments to the chat, but I wanted to see if Dr. Gingrich, if you would also kind of share a little bit of your story, because I think we have some time to do that as well.
Okay, sure. I'd be happy to. Thanks, Keisha. So I'm Dennis Gingrich. I was born and raised in the center of chocolate, Hershey, Pennsylvania, which was good because I could smell chocolate lots of days, and I love it. So I became interested early in family medicine because I had a very important person in my life, my family doctor, Dr. Lehman, who delivered me, took care of me as I was growing up, and then became the first chair of the first department of family medicine in the academic world in the country at Penn State. So I came to Penn State for medical school, and then he was my one of my faculty, and then I went off to residency in Pittsburgh, and I practiced in urban Los Angeles for a while with Kaiser Permanente. That was an interesting multicultural community that I really enjoyed. But then I came back because I called Dr. Lehman and I said, I think I'm ready to come back to my hometown now. Do you have a job for me? And he said, yes. So then he became my boss. I worked at Penn State for 35 years and just recently retired from that now. So I've seen a lot of family medicine. And I chose family medicine not just because of my important mentor, Dr. Lehman, but because I wanted to have an impact in the world around me. I wanted to have an impact on my patient, the family, the community, and I didn't want to be confined by sex or organ system or age or anything like that. So I decided family medicine is what's good for me. And just like you heard from the other stories, I've tried out a lot of things because in family medicine, you're trained in breadth and you don't have to retrain to do a lot of different things. So I started out in community medicine, then I moved to academic medicine, and I was actually hired to teach obstetrics to residents, to deliver babies with residents at Penn State. But then I switched to geriatrics, which is the care of elderly people. So that was pretty much of a switch. And then, then Dr. Lehman asked me if I wanted to be the first director of the student health service at the college. So I said, yeah, let me do that. So then I was doing young adult care and their families. And I was, through all of that, I was doing outpatient and hospital work as well. So I had a chance to do a lot of different things. And as a family doctor, you can go outside the clinic as well. So I had a chance to work in outside of the office in the community and actually quite a few ways. And that expands your impact because you're working with patients, but you're also working with the community. So over the years, I've served on my church board. I've given lots of lectures around the community to schools, churches, and Rotary. I became involved with the academies, served as president of the State Academy of Family Medicine, on the board of the Pennsylvania Medical Society, and I now serve on a few national boards as well. And I really like that chance to have an impact because that helps to link you up with places like talking with legislative assistants and doing media interviews. So all of those things can be part of your impact in the individuals, the families, and communities around you. And it's been quite an adventure over the years, and one that I've never been bored. I've never wanted to change what I did, and it's been really rewarding.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Such valuable stories and information. And yeah, we just appreciate y'all for sharing your story so far. So it looks like we've had a few people kind of jump into the chat, and it's great to hear what you guys are saying and what you're thinking about. So we have someone that says that they're working hard and they're passionate about wanting to get through medical school to become a doctor, and just figuring out what field that they're going to choose to go into. That's something that they're considering right now, but they're just going to keep swimming. That's fun. and great. Definitely requires hard work. And so I love that. And so another comment that we have is that just being passionate about following your dreams and your passions despite many challenges, which we've heard some challenges that all 4 of these family medicine docs have had along the journey. So just identifying with those stories and the obstacles that we have to get over, that you may have to get over in order to reach those goals, in order to reach what you're passionate about. And then someone else also said, I'm most passionate about learning and helping people. So I picked health professions because I'm learning and helping every single day. That's so awesome. I remember being hungry, seeking the invincible, and doing what many along the way told me was impossible. So it sounds like we have a lot of these docs did what was maybe considered impossible for their for who they were, or the influences around them may have told them it was impossible. So yeah, I'm loving all of these comments, and I'm loving this too. Growing up where I had a few role models. So I think we have a little bit of time, and so I'm going to actually spin off of that and see if you guys could answer, if I can ask you all the question of, where did you find role models it sounded like Dr. Gingrich, he talked about a role model that he had in his family doc, but anyone else, what role models specifically did you have how did you find those role models?
So I can share. So I wrote that in there. And for me, so I was the first college graduate in my family at the time. And so we didn't have any profession, like healthcare professionals or things like that in my family. And so my role models came in the way of passionate people. So I had a mother who worked 3 jobs to make $11,000 a year and didn't know English. And yet she was my role model because she was an example of hard work. And when you have a goal, we didn't always have the answer, how we were going to make ends meet. We didn't know how we were always going to have food on the table, or how we were going to make that payment for the rent or whatever next month. But she had goals. She had a mission. She had her eye on the prize, and she made it happen. For me, that was incredibly useful because as a kid, growing up next to the projects, where the symphony in my neighborhood, my concrete gardens that I call, were gunshots and sirens from the police and the EMS and things. So that was my backdrop. And so as I remember sitting in our little apartment, for me, she was my role model because of that passion. Because for me to get out of that situation, not having a pathway, I needed to have passion. I needed to not know how I was going to put the right foot in front of the left, but I needed to believe that it was possible. And so she was, for me, my most important role model, and sparked kind of my work ethic today. So
That's awesome. I love it. Dr. Gilbert or Dr. Silvas, any stories along role models?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to Dr. Ramirez as far as my mom. My mom also was a single parent, and it was me and my 3 other sisters. And of my mom and my sisters and everyone, I am the first to go off to college. And so she has always, honestly, she is all that has pushed me, but did it in such a loving and wonderful way. I think that I probably had more expectations or was harder on myself than my mom was. And she grounded me so much. And even till this day, when I talk to her about my journey as a physician, she always reminds me that if you touch one person and you've made a difference in at least one person, then you have done your work and have done what you needed to do. And it's just those small little reminders that help me to know why I went into medicine and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And, she always just tells me, but you touch one person, even if it's just one today, you have. And so that has really kept me grounded and kept me going. And I think along the way, we develop some role models that just become role models when you don't realize that they are. I think about, like I mentioned before, Dr. Shelley, who was my high school biology teacher. And when I moved back home, I actually ran into him at a restaurant. And, what is to say for me to be able to tell him that I'm actually a physician, and I credit him for that. And then even in my medical school and residency journey, I always credit Dr. Tringali, who was a great preceptor and mentor to me, who I still talk to this day all the time about how he has seen me grow from a physician, from a medical student to a resident to now a practicing physician. And so you get so many people that have impacted you along your way. And I think that I'm still developing that. Even here at Penn State, I have gotten a lot of mentors that have been very helpful to me. And one that comes, of course, to mind is Dr. David Richard, and how much he has been such a mentor to me since I've been here at Penn State. So you never get to a point of your career, which you hope you never get to a point of your career where you don't have mentors and role models and advisors, because everyone is always there to help you, to support you. And it's important to keep those people in your back corner as you go through your journeys.
Gosh, those are tough acts to follow. I actually don't have a dissimilar background to Sarah or Bernadette, surprisingly. I came from a poor family, a rural poor family, so different than Sarah's background growing up in the city. And really am the first person to go on to anything professional on either side of my family. So I think family medicine doctors in general share stories like that, just for all of you potentially future family doctors in the group today. I will say the only thing I'll add to what Bernadette just said is that my family always pushed me to make a difference in the world and to fight for people that don't have a voice. Whether you're a physician, a teacher, a lawyer, whether you're working in a grocery checkout line. The point is to really try to find a way to give back to your community in whatever capacity you have. I think, and I probably can speak for Dennis, Sarah, and Bernadette when I say that all of us as physicians have just incredible opportunities to give back and to advocate. And I think that's a key role that we do in family medicine on a consistent basis. We advocate for individual patients, for the families of the patients that we care for, and then more broadly, the communities that our families and patients live in. And so I think, whether you choose a career in medicine or whether or not you become a family doctor, in some ways is irrelevant. I would just challenge each of you to think about your future careers and your future lives of how you can advocate and give back and make the world a better place. That's kind of how I was raised. And I feel really blessed to be in the situation where I can do that as a physician, but I'm a firm believer that we all need to do that irrespective of what we end up doing professionally. I will also mention one other thing. One of my mentors is on the call today, Dr. G. I met Dr. G when I was a college student. I knew him throughout my medical school time at Penn State. When I trained at Wake Forest and did my rural Western adventures, I came back as a faculty member at Penn State. And Dr. G was a big part of that decision-making process for me. So he has been and continues to be a mentor for me. And I know Sarah and Bernadette well. And I know that they're not only do they have a cadre of mentors surrounding them, but they are also providing incredible mentorship to people here as well. So, mentorship is something that you will pay forward someday. You'll receive it and you'll be able to give it. And I think that we're all in the midst of still receiving it, but also now being able to provide it to others, which is a pretty rewarding feeling as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really great. And yeah, what an awesome way to even see that, like in this call, that Dr. Gingrich, even though he's on the call and you're on the call, and he's impacted you in such a way and has been that role model. So that actually, Dr. Silvas, you've kind of transitioned us into our next question, which is about impact. And so we're going to talk about impact and the impact that you all have had as family physicians and what that has looked like, because I do think it looks differently for everyone, but for various family docs, it could look like a variety of different things. So let's start with anyone, maybe Dr. Ramirez. How do you feel like you've had an impact, and what's a story maybe that you can share that shows that impact that you've had as a family doc?
What a loaded question for a family doctor. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is a story. I remember, so I had an elderly patient with Alzheimer's, and I got the call from her daughter that she had stopped eating. And we know that when a patient does that, there's very limited time that they have left. So within a couple of days, I was in their home. So I do home visits. Well, pre-COVID, did home visits. And I was sitting at their table and I was there for like 4 hours. I mean, they refused to let me go without eating dinner. And, we sat at the table, and I sat at the table with many, many members of their family, and more members came as the night progressed. I think I left around 10 p.m. And in that moment, as I sat at the table with so many different family members, as we talked about what are the next days of her life going to look like, what should you expect, and how should you prepare, I remember feeling incredibly humbled and privileged to be in a situation where I had gained the trust of not just my patient, but her family and multiple members of her family. And in that moment, I just was so touched. And I think it's the most touched that I've been in my role, because what you realize is that you're not just prescribing a pill to a person, you are transforming lives. And, in the care that I provide in the clinic where I am, many of my patients don't trust the healthcare community at all. They are very apprehensive about things we have to say. They have heard things in the news. We're a big institution. And so sometimes it takes a few visits for you to break down those walls and really build trust for them to believe what you're saying and trust that you want the best for them. And when you're able to make, like Bernadette said, make an impact in one person's life, you actually make an impact in a whole community's lives, which has been incredible. Most recently, I'm involved in getting COVID vaccines to different communities, minoritized communities, by a mobile unit in Pennsylvania. And I've gone out and done a couple of vaccination events. And there have been a couple where I've had a couple of my patients who show up and they're like, "Hey, Ramirez," and in those moments when you're walking the grocery store in the corner, talking to the person behind the cash register about COVID-19 vaccine and the people in the grocery store, you realize the impact, right, that your word has, the impact that your reputation has in the community. You don't realize, you think you go to work and you leave your name and your title in the office, but it's not until you're in the community that you realize that people in the whole community, people on the streets know who you are, and what you say and how you treat them and how you care for them actually has a huge impact. And finally, beyond teaching students like yourselves or college students or medical students or students in general, I have the privilege to be able to deliver babies. And it's just, my heart warms. I mean, I say they're all my babies. Personally, they're mine. So, I take care of the mom, her whole pregnancy. I show up when she's in labor. I deliver that baby. I see that baby after in the office. And the whole office knows this is Dr. Ramirez's baby. And now you see them grow. Like this week, I saw a couple that are now 3, and they're following me around in the office, and I feel so old. And that's just incredibly touching. And to know that I'm that child's doctor, and I delivered them and I took care of them where they were like a peanut size, but I'm also the doctor for mom, for dad, for grandma, and the aunt, and then the sister-in-law got pregnant and now I'm taking care of her. You almost need like a whiteboard to draw out all of the relationships and keep track of all your families, right? But you become part of the family, and it's incredibly humbling, and it's a privilege, which is why I feel as though medical school is like pledging a fraternity. You have to earn those 2 letters, because after, you're going to be trusted with things that no one else would be trusted with. You know, when I'm performing a C-section, I am literally inside someone's body. That's trust. That's huge. And so that med school's hard. The journey is hard, but it should be, because we end up in a very privileged situation, you know? So that's all I have.
I'm just going to piggyback quickly off of Dr. Ramirez, and not to reiterate everything that she already said, but then to also add one thing that I felt like I was able to make an impact on, particularly when I moved back home, was being able to go back to my high school and talk to high school students just like you guys. And for them, so I grew up in Harrisburg, and I attended Harrisburg City Schools, which have historically been viewed not always in the most positive light. And I've even had, since I've been back home, people be surprised when I tell them that I'm a product of Harrisburg School District and a product of Harrisburg High School. So for me to be able to go back to Harrisburg High and talk to students just like you, for them to say, you know, no matter what adversities you have or what others may feel or think, you can do it, I think has definitely been one of the strongest impacts, where I've even had students reach out to me afterwards and say, once I heard your journey and saw the things that you've been able to accomplish, it actually helps me to feel like I can do this as well too. So one of the key words in our profession is community. So we're family and community medicine. And that is something that I think all of us here on the call do wonderful job at really emphasizing that. So and all of us too have to sometimes cut down on all the things we say yes to, because we're so committed to making an impact and making a difference. But that's been one that I would say has been very rewarding to me, being able to go back to my own high school, my own community, and just be able to support them, and even see like old principals and teachers and all of them, to just let them know that they've made that impact. And that has been something that's been really inspiring.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Before Dr. Silvas goes, I do want to remind everyone, we're going to have a time for Q&A. So if you all want to add questions, I already saw one question from Bailey, but if you all want to add your questions while we're finishing up here, then that would be great. Okay, back to Dr. Silvas.
So I think what Sarah and Bernadette just shared, that's very powerful, very true. I'm just going to add a completely different wrinkle to this answer. So I've been in medicine now here at Penn State for 12 years, and I've become increasingly frustrated by only taking care of individual patients and their families, because US healthcare is really broken. We work in a very broken system that is unfair and unjust towards a lot of people. And I have really pivoted in my career to have an impact at the health system level. So we talk about individual patients, we talk about the families that we take care of, we talk about the communities we work in. The overarching healthcare system is really the machine that allows us to provide that care. And I think that the place that we need to have more advocacy and more impact is at that health system level. How do we prioritize our resources across huge swaths of the population to better serve patients who are in need, and advocate for chunks of our society that they just don't have a voice? So I think that one beautiful thing about family medicine is that we naturally think about the interconnectivity of all those different layers of society. And so we are particularly well suited to think big. And I think we need your generation to be part of the solution for some of the problems we're having in US healthcare. And so I think we need systems leaders that understand the needs of individual patients, families, and communities to strive for big picture solutions for how we do a better job delivering care across society. So that's a big impact you can have, I think, in your future careers if that becomes something that motivates and energizes you.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. And Dr. Gingrich, do you want to add something quickly?
Sure.
Move on to questions. We have about 10 minutes left in the session, so
Okay.
yes. So if you want to add something as well.
Just thinking of a couple of things here briefly. One is I think the way to have an impact is what we've already been talking about. Mentorship is, I think, very important. And since I've worked as an academic physician, I've had a chance to be the faculty advisor for more than 100 medical students over the course of years, and they've gone on to do wonderful things in their practices and treat quite a large number of patients. So it's good to have that impact. I also have had the benefit, just like you've heard from the other presenters, of having many patients tell me how much they appreciate what I'm doing, because family doctors provide continuity of care over the course of generations, over years, and there are a lot of patients that I've taken care of for 20 or 30 years, and that makes such a difference in their lives, and it's so rewarding for us. I just wanted to mention another kind of a twist. There's so many ways that you can have impact, and one thought occurred to me that I was once giving an interview to our local public television station on quitting smoking. And when I gave the interview, I didn't think too much about it, but we talked about the background of smoking and how to quit and why it's important for you to quit. And I was very surprised later to see that they had put graphics in, put music in, put narration in behind me, and created a 2 to 3 minute segment that they showed on television quite a few times. And they brought it back a few years later and showed it again. And I'm thinking you can have an impact in your community beyond the office too, because that message on quitting smoking reached thousands of people in a multi-county area, and that's an impact too. So don't think that it just has to be in the office, but it starts in the office if you're a family doctor.
That's really great. I love that. And all of the insights that have been shared so far. So we're going to quickly turn to some questions a couple of questions that have been submitted. It looks like, I think the question that we'll probably spend the majority of, or the rest of our time on, is the last question that was added. And it was that I think that all of you have touched on the disparities that appear in the healthcare field. Could you please talk about any stories you might have about the progress you have seen within the field when it comes to narrowing the gap of those disparities, whether it be for underrepresented medical students, minority patients, or the healthcare system on the larger scale? That's a loaded question.
I think we all do a little bit of that work, just because I have the pleasure of working with both Dr. Silvas and Dr. Ramirez in a lot of those areas. So as you guys know or have seen or experienced, we have made a different shift in our country and in how we are actually looking into these areas and advancing not just diversity, but also equity, inclusiveness. And I think that at least I can just talk about our experiences here. I think that it is evolving efforts that our institution is continuing to make. So I'll talk about a little bit from my standpoint, because I do a lot from the medical student standpoint. And then I think in part of the other questions about our patients and our healthcare systems, I'll also leave time for Dr. Ramirez and Dr. Silvas to contribute to that. From a medical student standpoint, we have always acknowledged that our medical students who are underrepresented underrepresented have a unique experience while they're here in medical school. And I'll be happy to talk more about that as well. So we've looked into a lot of efforts to actually help them to be more supported. And that is actually where my role has actually come in, to be a support person, an additional support person, not just for our underrepresented students, but also for students who feel as if they want to be allies as well too. Okay, 5 minutes left. I'll be real quick. We've also made advances as far as the admission process. We have made connections from a high school level, from a college level, particularly advancing our partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities. And we've also, once we have students got here, we actually have like our mentoring programs, which is like a champion mentoring programs that connect you either with a faculty or a previous alumni. And we've also made changes to our curriculum to make our curriculum more inclusive and to make sure that we're teaching our medical students about the importance of inclusion, diversity, and how you can provide culturally competent care. So I'll stop there so that others can give in, knowing that we're on a short period of time.
So I'll be quick, or try to. So in the last few years, given the events, I think it has put a magnifying glass on a lot of things that many people might have been turning their eyes to. And as a result, our institution has really, really focused in on issues around health disparities and equity and inclusion, as Dr. Gilbert mentioned. So Dr. Gilbert and myself sit on a team, and we are looking at various calculators that are used to evaluate, for example, kidney function and lung function and things like that, that are historically based on a race correction. And we are looking at whether or not we should be using those. And we've thus far been successful at getting the institution to reconsider at least one of those, which is huge, a huge shift. So that's fantastic. The institution has also formed a task force looking to evaluate our interpreter services across the institution, which I am a member of. So that's huge. Our institution has also recognized that our faculty and staff need support. So for example, we have recently, and I think Dr. Gilbert, you're on the Black Professionals Association, and I'm chairing the Hispanic Professionals Association. And so these are networking and resources to bring us together and network and provide support. There's a lot happening at Penn State. We need another few hours to talk about that. And we got, what, 2 minutes? So.
I just real quick, just mention that it's really important that we look like the communities we serve, and we don't. We are predominantly white in medical care. That's not just physicians, that's physician assistants, nurse practitioners, that's radiology technicians, that's staff. We are predominantly white. We have a pretty good split between men and women in family medicine, but we don't have enough female leaders within family medicine. So we have a lot of work and a lot of opportunity to do better. The status quo is clearly not good enough, and we have to have the political will to change the system. So folks like Sarah and Bernadette are integral to us changing the system. And so we're really working hard to make, particularly within family medicine, we really want patients to be comfortable and to relate to the providers and the staff that are taking care of them in a medical environment. And that's going to require really a renewed focus and energy around making some tough decisions and actually really not just saying that we believe in diversity, equity, inclusion, but actually developing policies and really working towards creating it. And I think we're I don't know, Bernadette, Sarah, we're not immature, but we're also not mature. We're like maybe adolescent in this space. I think we have a lot of energy and but we have a lot of opportunity that we have to pursue, and we have a lot of work ahead of us to get to that point.
And we have a lot of people having the conversation, a lot of people coming together to form teams and task forces and committees, and things are happening and things are changing, which is huge, at least for, you know, our institution.
I think we should say that family doctors want equity for our patients as well. And we want everybody to have the same opportunity to succeed and to achieve good health. And one of the things that we have done collectively in our academy is set up the Everyone Project online on a website. And anyone can access that, especially the neighborhood navigator. It can be a family doctor, it can be a family, it can be a social worker that helps identify based on zip code where the resources are for food, for transportation, shelter, and other things within the community. And that's generated and housed by the Academy of Family Physicians, the American Academy of Family Physicians. And I think that's one of the things that we feel we stand for as family doctors.
Awesome. Thank you so much to you all for sharing those great insights. And yes, I actually am going to put something in the chat for the Everyone Project so that you all can take a look at. And I'll also like put my information in here so that you guys can reach out to me if you'd have questions. And so yeah, and I think we have to wrap up in the next 3 minutes, but I think that they're going to kick us out. And so I do know that Dr. Mears just asked, do you think they know the breadth of what family docs do? Do you want to like give a 30-second answer to that, Dr. Mears? And I'll share my info while you're doing that.
30 seconds. Oh my goodness. Okay. How about before you're born, when you're just a thought, you want to get pregnant, to as you're exiting the world. So we're taking care of pregnant people, delivering babies. We're doing pediatrics. We're doing internal medicine. We're doing geriatric care of the elderly. We're doing dermatology, sports medicine, lots of procedures, lots of advocacy, administrative stuff like Dr. Silvas said, a whole lot of things. We are kind of a one-stop shop, your cradle to grave doctors. So Bernadette, Matt, I don't know if you want to add more to that.
And on top of that, we teach. We are always, I will say, touted as being some of the best teachers within the College of Medicine. We also, like you said, do a lot of community work and advocacy as well. And we do research. So don't forget about that aspect. We have a huge research component and even a whole section of research in our department. So.
All right, awesome. Well, I have shared those links and let's get off before they kick us off. And so thank you all so much again for sharing, and participants, feel free to click on those links and also write down my info if you would like to reach me with any questions. And that'll be it. Oh, and looks like Dr. Gilbert shared hers as well. So thank you all so much and we appreciate you.